Hello, and welcome to another discussion in the SF Masterworks series. We work our way through the SF Masterworks published by Golanx in the order they were published as Masterworks, not their original publication order, which would be all over the place. But we read one book every month. And today we're going to be talking about The Centauri Device by M. John Harrison. Very nice. Here are some book swipes across the screen for your entertainment. and uh, we will be reading Dr. Blood Money by Philip K. Dick because it's been about like half a month without a PKD book.
Mhm.
And then Nonstop by Brian Aldiss. That will be our book for July. And then The Fountains of Paradise by Arthur C. Clarke for August. Those are our three books coming up. If you'd like to join us for any of these discussions are open for anyone interested. Please check out the page viewing forum. That's where we do all the planning and post the links and so on. Yeah, that's everything. And of course, we have the usual group of friends. They will introduce themselves. Jared, could you kick us off?
Sure. I am Jared. I'm from the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and also the Speculative Speculation podcast. And you can find me on the page chewing forums as well. Chris?
Yeah. So I am Chris Mullen. I am from the Chronicler Chris YouTube channel. I'm also from Speculative Speculations on the Patreon forums as well. Yeah.
And I'm Layla Goshi. I'm a writer. I edit Balladine magazine, and I've just opened a new page on the magazine called The Helical for speculative fiction. So I invite speculative fiction submissions.
Nice. Okay, that's cool. So let's do our usual round of high-level thoughts for this book. This should be fun. I'm gonna grab some popcorn.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go first, right?
Yes.
I'm going to try and give this a go. So this is a book that is supposedly. I actually think it's a story about the device written in the style of the device because we don't really know what the device does, right? I think that's on purpose. And this is a story I don't really know what it's about. So it's almost like we're missing a lot of the detail. But the couple of things that I come away from it is it appears to give off, and I wouldn't be surprised, it feels like a really deeply political novel. It has all the tropes of this is trying to make a really big point about something, because it does have elements actually of, Earth politics in it. I think kind of put very front line and center. It kind of gets that out there very quickly, and then sort of obfuscates other stuff around it. It has too many characters. The no place in it. Too many locations. There's no place, and it doesn't cohesively fit together. But I think there is a core of a really interesting novel in here, and some of the prose is absolutely beautiful. It just doesn't make sense. There were numerous times I went, that's a lovely sentence. I'm going to read it again in context and with the paragraph before and the paragraph end. And it's just like word soup. Actually, it's beautiful word soup sometimes, but it's just word soup. And I found it frustrating at times to read, but also what happens then is you sort of invent what the actual plot and the story is. I think you sort of fill in the gaps yourself. And I found myself sort of interpolating what I thought was probably happening here, and then getting to the end of the book and going, the book that I have in my head is not the book that I read. I've tried to fill in the blanks. So it's a very confusing book. It's a very confusing narrative story. And that may have been completely by design, but it also may be because of a lot of drugs or whatever that was happening at the time.
Well, what was happening in your novel, Chris, was probably not happening in my novel. But I think he is trying to say something about the modern state of affairs. Like you said, it's the Israelis versus the Arabs in the Middle East that have basically been transposed into outer space, and you had, I think you said yesterday that John Truck represents America or the Western world of some sort.
Yeah, something. Yeah,
But
represents something.
but
I think I've come off the America part actually as I finished the book, but yeah.
but what he represents is the entanglement aspect of it, and I think and in his case, he's throughout the whole book he's denying trying to get entangled in this conflict between these two different sides, and eventually he does get thrown in, by being kidnapped and knocked out and drugged several times, uh, but either by himself or somebody else. And um, and what is the device? Like, I have no idea what the device is. I know it does something wacky, and it's weird that the entanglement involves the fact that only he can use the device,
Mhm.
and it's like, what does that represent? I really don't know, and I really don't know what was happening half the time when he would wake up someplace else, and I don't know what that someplace else was, and I don't know who that someone else he was waking up next to was half the time. And uh, so it was a really strange novel. And like you said, there were some beautiful passages, and I think if you were to go through the book and just take random passages and throw them onto a page somewhere, it might make a beautiful poem too. Who knows? But the yeah, it was really confounding, and yeah, we can get more into it later. But
Yeah. Well, I echo everything that's been said. And high level, I have to say, kind of like what Jared was saying, I spent a good third of the book feeling like I did not know where he was. You know, the bar was like the street, was like somebody's office or his home, and I always kept checking back, trying to backtrack and say, well, when did he come into this scene or what happened? So that's my first high level thought, that the world building was non existent, really, and not in a way where sometimes that might work if you're within a character's world somehow, like I think it works if you're reading like a some kind of internally driven novel, but this one wasn't. We were still looking at it through a third person lens. So there was that. I did find a couple of good quotes I liked out of it, so I'll give him that. I think he does turn a phrase well, yes.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're completely out of joint. Um, and I think another mistake he made was using a contemporary political framework to talk about it, because it anything like that is going to age, or need more explanation. Like I was thinking back to the book we read where, um, what's the name of that book? I'll think of it. But where Kennedy, somehow through the timeline, Kennedy was not assassinated.
Time
1122.
skip.
Oh, time skip that one. Yes,
Timeskip.
Yeah.
I was
I,
thinking
I
1122,
actually like
53. Sorry.
Yeah, I like that book. I think it worked. I think that scenario worked. But I remember how I think Varsha, you hadn't really caught it because it was, not necessarily something you had been aware of. So in those cases, I do feel like pulling in a contemporary or any political, real life political issue, you run the risk of readers even 5 years down the line not
Yeah.
really remembering what was going on, and why that matters. So I think that's lesson learned to any fantasy sci-fi writer. invent everything. Don't try to tie it to the real world. Um, and so that's my high level overview, and have much to say. Otherwise, too. Yeah. So
Um, yeah, I will talk about. I have two analogies for my experience of reading this book. one, one is like, okay, I had a lot of trouble following just anything that was happening, and I think all of you sort of echo that sentiment. And I tried really hard to put my finger on it. I think because a sentence would make sense, but then there'd be like three words in there that I have no idea what they mean, and they're not like, it's not an English language problem, it's invented words, and there's not enough in the course of the book to build context on what said word means. I think maybe slightly, but it's still like lacking in explanation enough to be jarring every time it shows up. I think some examples are like opener and the dine, which are the ones that I vaguely understand what they are. And there are like tons like that, which I have no idea what they are. They show up once and that's it. There's no other explanation. So it feels like reading, we were talking about this yesterday, like reading a book in a foreign language, and or at least with a book that's written in like two languages mixed together. Like there's some, we call Hinglish, for Hindi and English. We throw in Hindi words like when we speak, some of us in India. So this feels like maybe if someone wrote a book in Hinglish, except I have no idea, like I don't understand any Hindi. So it feels like that. So I kept losing track of what was happening. And then the other thing was like if I was playing a TV show in the background and I fell asleep and I kept waking up to watch scenes in between, and like that's how I kept track of the entire story. So that's how this felt,
like
because I'd read, I'd not understand most of the sentences, and then we'd end up somewhere and I'm like, oh, how did we end up here? When did this person die? And yeah, like both of okay, Fix, I know what happened, but Tiny, I have no idea when he died. And most of the characters. So I think one thing I was at a bit of a disadvantage for, this one didn't have a Kindle edition, so I have trouble with names. I have trouble keeping track of like who's who until I like look up the person 5 times in the same book. I normally do that by using Kindle search, which did not have a Kindle edition this time, so I just relied on memory, which wasn't willing to cooperate for this book.
It's Amazon's fault. I knew it.
I know, yeah. Well, no, I looked up the websites you gave me to. I think it's just not available in the US, probably,
it's
the
not.
ebook.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I couldn't keep track of the characters either. So I just know that Alice Gore is the Israeli president that they hate, but that's about it. That's I don't know who Angina is. I don't know. I don't know their factions or like their associations and what they want from him. So yeah, overall it was a very confusing experience, and I don't really know what I got out of the book. I think all of you are far ahead of me in terms of what you think may have happened in the book, because I'm clueless.
Yeah, similar experiences all around. Then I mean, not dissimilar from each other in some ways. There are some things that I feel like were in the book that I can definitely say. This war is between two factions, and this seems to have dominated the kind of interstellar kind of whatever it is within it. John Truck is a Centauran. He is one of the last left. They were wiped out in a genocide as part of this war.
Was he? Or was he half Centauran?
Well, but he had Centauran blood. But I mean, that was the point, I think, by the end of the book, was the fact that there were loads of Centaurans, actually, because everybody was affected by the war in some way. You know, I think that was one of the points that came out at the end. But the fact that they wiped out the Centaurans at the time, but all of a sudden they were becoming key to the conflict, if you know what I mean, or to ending the conflict or winning the conflict from one side or the other one, because of this kind of device that they were sort of linked to. And then the fact that you John Truck, who didn't want anything to do with it. In fact, he wasn't even a good person. He was just somebody that was a drug dealer. He was a drug taker. He kind of did it all throughout the whole universe. But he was drawn into this conflict by the fact that by trying to not get involved, he kept losing everybody that mattered to him one by one. And that's what I say. But I mean, it feels incredibly political in terms of like that central message that's coming just from that little bit. And I think it's difficult not to, sort of like Layla says, because it has that real world setting with the people in it. It's hard not to try and ascribe people's names and parts of Earth history to this book, as it should be like a one-on-one metaphor, and it probably was not, if you know what I mean. But you can't but try and do that because it's sort of close, and especially it's one of those eternal conflicts that isn't going away, as we're evidenced by the moment. It's one of those things that sort of, in some ways, you can see it sort of happening on a less galactic scale in current day as much as anything else. So I think the book suffers from that closeness, as Layla says. You know, it ages badly. It kind of ruins, I think, the experience and the message that you're trying to send, because these political things at the time. I actually looked up. This is one of these books where I think you had to know when it was written. Like, if you had made me guess, I would have guessed middle 80s, actually, because of the political context in it. But it's actually 74, which kind of, again, gives the idea that it probably isn't what I thought it was about.
Well, you mentioned part of the eternal conflict, that's going on, and Layla mentioned, a couple of quotable lines in here, and related to both of those is the line that we live in a sick charade of political polarities, of death, bad art, and wasted time, all in the cause of ideologies that were a century out of date in their heyday. That's a direct thing that was happening in the 70s as well as today as well. But so that is the political aspect that he's throwing into the book, and that he's centering his conflict around, which very much reflected the time that he was in, in the early 70s, especially if you were paying attention to other world events besides just Vietnam. And so, that's very, very poignant. So he had quite a few lines like that in here, that taken out of the book are kind of universal statements about current events. And then, but it still didn't add to the story or make sense within the context of the story, or the story of John Truck and who he was and what these people were trying to do with him. Specifically, they wanted him to, I don't know if it was control the device or set it off or what, and it didn't seem to be what everybody thought it was, and I'm not sure what exactly happened when or if it did go off. So all that stuff was weird, but the political statements were definitely there. Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts. I just want to mention a few. First, I agree about his, what he was ultimately aiming for, as you said, is making a comment about intractable situations. And here's this guy that's just like hanging around, and he's just being buffeted, between the two, like most civilians. I mean, he does speak up for civilians. He says, you have your conflict, but all these people that have nothing to do with it are getting killed. And so he is sort of that he is that voice. I think he is trying to make that point. And then there was something else about that. Chris, did you mention The Expanse?
No, I didn't. But
okay.
There are definitely parallels there. Yeah.
Yeah, I really I noticed several things in there that I feel like, if not a direct transfer that, just that vibe,
Mhm.
the vibe of the people, the hardworking people on these technologically supported platforms. And I could see how, for purposes of the masterwork list, possibly this book, was a launch pad for that. But I want to take another approach to another thought I had, because, what he also did by using the Arab Israeli conflict, I'm going to do that in quotes, is that he perpetuated stereotypes and myths, though it's obvious he really didn't know what he was talking
Talking
about.
about.
You know?
Oh, good point.
And in terms of, and that that situation has been framed as, something that's been going on forever. It really has only been going on since the early 1900s. And but by perpetuating it, it's part of propaganda to perpetuate it as intractable. Nobody can do anything about it. Just don't pay attention to it. When it's really settler colonialism supported by the U.S. government, which my taxes have been paying for. That's a whole other story. Um, so, but he perpetuated that propaganda. So that's another way. That's another reason for not using contemporary
That's
um,
that's a great point.
information. And when people say, "Oh, they've been fighting for centuries," well, first they haven't, but humans around the world have been fighting for centuries. I mean, we have states in the U.S. in competition. Who's got the water rights between the state of Colorado and the state of New Mexico? Yeah, it's not a flare up, but everybody's in competition constantly. And the same thing around the world. Europe has had its wars. So anyway, perpetuating propaganda. So I'll get off that soapbox. But so when one thing I did notice is that, so our hero is indigenous to Centauri, and at the end of the book, it's the indigenous person who takes everybody down. So, as someone who cares about indigenous rights,
Yeah.
okay, I kind of like the book for that reason. So, ultimately, the indigenous person is the one of that heritage, is the one that took them all out. And what they thought was, they were competing over him, like they actually had control of him. But once he hooked up with the device, he didn't need them. And there's no way they can control them. And he ended up blowing up the earth, which I don't know what message that sends. But so here's this, indigenous person out of left field that they thought they could control. And he ends up So I even wonder, was he really thinking about Vietnam? I mean, did he use the Arab-Israeli situation as a way of writing about Vietnam? But maybe I'm psychoanalyzing him too much, because they were in the thick of it in 1974. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, there's that. But I did recognize he's like the opposite of James Holden. We read all the way to the end. James Holden also took himself out for the good of humanity, right?
Yeah.
At the end of The Expanse. So I did kind of get he's a really loserish type of James Holden, who ultimately in the end solved the problem by getting rid of the device and the people who wanted to control it.
It's interesting.
So there's
Ironically, though, Lila, I like John Truck better than James Holden. Actually, he's an absolute. He is a sort of everybody. I think this is the thing about John Truck, is that he is not a person of significance at all.
Yeah.
He's sort of like the dregs of society. And I do think you definitely get a sense by the end of the book when he's sort of cornered in this room by the factions and they're basically trying to compete for him. I think he realizes, and we realize, he is under no threat actually in this situation. You know, he holds all the cards, exactly as you say. You know, he decides what happens at the end of this and decides that he has the ultimate power. And you can see the desperation sort of happening in that final scene as people realize that they thought he was a plaything or a toy for them the whole way. They chased him across the galaxy. They did all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, at the end, he realized he didn't need any of it. He sort of played this game of, right, I want to hear your bid. I want to hear your bid. And it sort of didn't mean anything to him at that stage. And he had lost so much at the time. They created the conditions for him to make the ultimate decision at the end by their own actions, and that kind of stuff. So there are definitely powerful parts of the book, I think, that can come out of it. It's just that the journey to get to that point felt messy. Like, even as Varsha sort of pointed, if it had been very clear when people died and how they were lost, because some of them happen off screen, etc., then I would have been more invested and sort of seen the pain of John Truck as it goes through the book. But for a character that we spend the whole book with, I don't really think you get much of a sense of who John Truck is either, and I think that's a feeling of the book as well.
Well, you just kind of explained the character and the ending of the book better than the book did. Right.
Well, that's that's actually what happened at the end of the book. Because, like I say, I've invented an awful lot of the stuff in my head as filling in the blanks. So I
filling in the blanks
with a version. Yeah.
There is a sense of you are thrown in the middle of this universe here. You're definitely not on any kind of quest or anything like that where things are being explained to you along the way. You're thrown into the almost immersed into this universe whole cloth, as if he expected you to know what's going on, and you've already been there, and so you're supposed to just go along and see what happens to John Truck in this already set place that you just kind of got to figure it out as you go along. And when he has statements about strange fish and impossible mediums, and it's hard to figure out. It's not easy.
You know, I did go out and read a few things to try to understand it all, and there was one argument for everything we're talking about being intentional in order to convey a sort of like what is it? The randomness of the life that he's in. You know, the historical issue of Earth, the wife who has a disfigurement, just every single thing, the friend who's a musician, just that. So it was a person who had constant competing frameworks being thrown at him and us. And I guess the message is, if we feel this bad, imagine how bad John Truck feels, trying to figure this out, trying to figure out where he is, what's going on, having to adjust to these different issues, which is it is a life thing that we really do all live in, that type of world anyway, where we, different workplace, different places, we have different things to confront. And so a generous reading of it was that that's what he was trying to do. But it doesn't work. There's not enough connection and continuity for us, the reader. I think it's okay if the character is having that, those sensations, and we're told that, but we need some kind of logic just to enjoy the book too. So. Yeah. But I did find a quote, if I can read, by
please.
our writer. So let me find that. So this is back in, oh gosh, I can't find, I'll see if I can find the name of it's something like Logan magazine. I'll look. But back in 2003, he said, I find it deeply ironic, but absolutely predictable that my best books are out of print, while the crappiest thing I ever wrote, the Centauri device, poodles along under the rubric Masterwork. I'll put that in the chat. Maybe that can be.
That is absolutely brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you know the best part is he should be the first author to put. Do you know the quotes they get from famous authors about how great the book is? No, splendid, Brandon Sanderson. He should have that his own quote on his own book. Crappiest thing I ever wrote.
That is funny.
Oh,
Wow.
So why do you think? So what are the reasons it's on Masterworks? Really, is it just the the trope?
I mean, the Masterworks as a moniker is a funny thing, because in the publishing world, it's just because Gollancz hold the rights to it. I mean, realistically, that's what the Masterworks thing is, and I but like a lot of collections like this, often when you're talking about Masterworks, you're talking about the authors actually, rather than singular books, because a lot of the Masterworks is recurring authors right the way through it. So that's why you get a lot of PKD. That's why you get a lot of different people that are repeat authors. Alfred Bester, and even our good friend Olaf Stapleton has his bits in there. So it's often about just who they have the rights to. And so when I'm sure they were putting like 2 a month, or something around that time. They might have bundled a really strong book with this because they had the rights of it, just to sort of kind of put it out. So it's not really just the best of science fiction, even though a lot of these books are great, as so happens, because the authors were great and really inventive and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that I can say about this book that makes it great is, thank God, it's only 200 pages. If this had been 400 pages, none of us would have reached the end.
Yeah.
No, we would not have.
That would have been tough. Yeah.
Yeah, you are right about that. That did remind me of something else. I had trouble purchasing the book. Did anyone else?
No, it's fine in the UK. This is.
Oh, it was available?
Yeah. Easily available, multiple ways. For us, we had Kindle versions, and yeah.
I found it used, so.
Because it wasn't available.
Somebody got rid of it. What?
Somebody's sucking me into buying it.
Where did you get that, Jared? I mean, did you find it at a?
It was on Amazon. It was on Amazon, but it was a used copy on Amazon.
Yeah, I did get a used copy off of Amazon, but they were a little bit. But there were not any new copies that I could find.
Oh.
I couldn't find. So, and then, so I got a used copy. I attempted reading it, made about halfway through, lost it. And I'm like, I refuse to buy that book again, because I'm going to end up having 2 books of a book that I hate, So,
now I know what to get you all for Christmas, though.
Yeah.
This has worked out fantastically.
Yeah. So then I went and I found it on Oceans of PDF, one of those PDF things. So I'm like, well, I'll just go with this, and listen to it. Actually, I listened to it second, because I had tried to read it first. Then I listened to it, and I went back and, read it on PDF. Okay. See you.
See you, Chris.
Yep. And so I had a question about the the prevalence of drug use, and do you think that reflected the times as well? Was that, he mentions, it gets mentioned to John Truck that it's a pusher's galaxy, and I usually, obviously that's a direct reference to the drug use in the book, but it's also, I mean, I guess it could represent pushing other things as well, ideologies, other means of, other aspects of life and social structure and stuff like that. But um, he definitely frames that around John Truck's drug problem and some of the people's problems that he deals with as well. So I didn't know what you thought about that aspect of it.
I wonder, I this and some of the other books we've read, you know, especially when it deals with women of the way they wrote about women at that time. If it's for audience value, I mean, the whole drug scene was a thing, in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Um, and with a writer including that topic and the drug underground and all of that, was that like a selling point for publishers? I mean, to if that was something that they felt would draw readers. I wonder about that. I don't know, but I do actually like. I like books that do talk about the underground and just what people do to get by type of stories.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if, because we did not really have that in the 50s, but suddenly in the 60s, 70s, we start having that as a more openly written about topic. So, yeah. So I would say I wonder if there was a draw. I don't know why the writer wrote it, but I wonder if for publishers that was a selling point that might be a draw for readers. So.
Yeah. I mean, maybe writers were trying to tap into a vein, trying to, figuratively, and the because of course Philip K. Dick is one of the authors that brings up drug use quite a bit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and he's on here a lot too. But he's this a lot of the writing in here reminded me of Dick quite a bit, in some ways, but I think even if publishers did enjoy it, it's also something that was a brought up in society. So it might be something that writers would want to explore, or
Right.
just make aware and mention, just because like it may or may not appeal to the current the social talk or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's. I think that's one reason, and then just a writer expressing concerns of his own generation or experiences. Um,
Yeah.
and I just can't help but keep thinking the Vietnam War is right there, with all of the issues and, you know, controversies. And even though you don't have a direct relevance to it in the book, I think the tone and the grittiness and the struggle um, reflect the broader picture, you know. So, um,
Was he British or American? Do you know?
oh gosh, I thought. Let me see if that's back on here.
I know he did
I
do
think he's
some.
British.
He did some work for Michael Moorcock. So is Moorcock British?
English author and literary critic.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Cool. Very
one thing
strange.
one thing I did like, I don't know what the rat bomb wars were, but I like the name.
I know.
That I do think he has some good turns of phrase. Um, I'll read a couple of his quotes I liked. He noticed that the lice had stopped biting him. He suspected they'd left the sinking ship. And then Tiny, with the brain of a jackdaw and all the moral sensibility in a cemetery, had been pocketing something or other. But just,
That one.
I do like some of his like descriptions and just wry commentary. That's pretty fun. Um, and then, what about the depiction of his wife? You know,
Jeez, I don't know. I didn't even remember he was married.
well, he shows up. I think it's more of a characterization of him than of her because apparently she's disfigured for some reason, and he knows that. And he shows up, and she says she knows he's going to leave again, and she's all sad and depressed about that. And he knows he's going to leave again too. And okay, so I just think that's more about showing us who he is. I mean, he does have a he does have a moral sensibility toward humanity at large. You know, like he doesn't like to see people killed, and
No.
he cares about his friends. He gets mad when Tiny dies, but his wife not so much. You know, she's convenient when he's there. He needs a place to hide out, um, but he knows he can't stay with her just because of the way he is, his personality. It's not anything to do with her, really. So I just thought that was an interesting. I always kind of look at how are women portrayed in the books, and but I think in that era, it's still sort of that more like a prop, essentially, to define him and define his limits.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely not a strong point in the book.
yeah.
But there was one line about his wife that stood out to me, but I don't have enough on Chuck's character to figure out what to make of it. I think the first time when he meets her and then he leaves, we sort of like zoom in on her disfigurement. We're told about the scar on her face, and then we're told that it's easy to think because she has that disfigurement that Chuck has married her out of pity. Like the relationship is like Chuck pities her and is trying to be nice to her, but um, for all you know, it could be the other way around. Like we don't know what about Chuck attracts him to her. So so that would be a very profound statement in which we had like a great character study of Chuck and got to understand him quite a bit. I didn't, but I was curious if either of you know what that was about.
Now, how exactly? I remember that part, but what was the quote?
Let me see if I can. Oh, I can't. I don't have the ebook. But it as he was after he left, it was sort of like a statement that the word pity was used. I think that they were in this relationship because Chuck pitied her, like, or not
Oh,
because, but despite the fact that she has this disfigurement. So maybe if Chuck is staying in this relationship because he pities her, but maybe she pities him, and and maybe that's the relationship they have, and like that's sort of thrown as something to consider. It's not even like a statement of who pities whom. It's just a sort of omniscient narrator thought that is thrown at us. But
I like that because of the two, she's actually the stronger, more stable. So, I mean, she has a place to live, you know. She has a job, she's predictable, and he goes to her because um, he knows she'll give him shelter and let him in. So she is the stronger person in some ways, but she's weak in terms of her affection for him. So I think that's a good explanation. I think that
yeah,
yeah,
nice.
yeah, that makes sense. And there was one other. Oh, his mother, who he doesn't really have an attachment to.
Right, the full Centauran. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I mean, if he didn't know her, you know, he really wouldn't have a strong attachment. So, and again, I don't know why I fixated on Holden as a comparison, but Holden had a loving family with multiple parents, you know, and but was living within a you know, a more predictable universe than Truck is. So I guess I'm saying Truck is like maybe he's one of the first anti-heroes, you know.
Yeah, he's kind of like an early Han Solo almost.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, where
I was thinking
he's a rogue. He's you know, a drug dealer. He's a bounty kind of, not a bounty hunter, I guess, but you know, he's on the
yeah,
fringes. He's on the fringes, yeah. Whereas Holden as a character, he's more mainstream. He's more involved. You know, normal upbringing and stuff like that. And so it's yeah, he's definitely you know, he would be a criminal if that was something that was strictly enforced in this particular universe, you know.
that's right.
But he's tolerated on the outskirts of society.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I feel like the concept of the book, I really did like it. I mean, I like the idea of, you know, ancient devices and the designated hero. Only one person can, you know, handle this device. You know, it's like the special sword. You know, um, the inheritance, all of that stuff. I mean, I think everything he's working with is great. You know, it just didn't come together. So, and I went ahead and put there's on my rating, I like there is now a level 0. But which is lower, huh? Or there is now level 0.
So I think at that point they're not mutually ranked. It's just
Oh,
it is just an expression of your feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, interesting. Yeah.
I just want to say, as a good news, I was saying before we started, I went ahead and because I went ahead and looked for summaries and reviews of this book. And in doing that, I found a lot of praise for M. John Harrison. So I ended up reading his other book called The Pastel City. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that book.
Interesting.
It has a lot of the same concepts of, you know, people on the, not on the, not the elite, you know, people in just the lower ends of society, but still coming together for a cause. I think the hero is a couple of them are former military who have come back in to save a queen. I mean, it's just got all of that stuff that makes an interesting story. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask if, like, one thing I was wondering about was whether this is just his writing style and, like the sort of jumping over scenes and stuff without any explanation or any grounding. So I guess you maybe answered that question. Pastel City, how does it compare in terms of like the style?
I think it's the same style with some really, they both have inventive ideas, but the inventive ideas in the Pastel City land better. And I think are pretty cool. It also deals with some ancient technology stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, but it just comes together better and makes more sense. And you see the bonds between the characters in the book are more understandable. And most importantly, you know where you are. You know if you're in a forest or if you're in a tavern or if you're, wherever.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. So there's hope for more M.
There is
John
hope for that.
Harrison. Yeah. Because I think we have another M. John Harrison coming up soon. Okay. Oh no, not soon. Light is
looked.
coming up many, many years later.
Oh, okay.
Wait, where is it?
I think it's number 169 in the Masterworks list.
Oh,
So we are currently on 31.
okay. So we've got a while.
See,
Yeah.
see in 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
That's so
anything
fun.
else before we wrap up?
Nope. I just hope everybody knows where they're waking up, unlike this guy.
Exactly.
That's a good thought. Okay, so we'll be back next month with Dr. Blood Money, and then in July with Nonstop by Brian W. Aldiss, and then The Fountains of Paradise will be our August book. If you'd like to join us for any of these, once again, please check out the Patreon forum. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.